Who can dethrone the Georgia Bulldogs? I'll let our guest start first. SEC Mike, make the case. Who does it?
I mean, is it cheating to say Georgia? I mean, I
Yes.
wonder if it's internally, just being on top of that mountain, everybody chasing you. That's something I got to look at. But heck, I'm a Tennessee grad, so I'll just take the homer pick. Tennessee. Obviously, I think the offense will take a step back because Hendon Hooker was so good. Jalen Hyatt, of course, won the Biletnikoff. Cedric Tillman, very underrated. He got banged up last offseason. But I just got so much faith in Josh Heupel, what he's done, not just at Tennessee, but everywhere he's been, produces incredible, efficient offenses. I think they'll do it again. I think the defense is getting deeper and more talented. I know they had the blowout against South Carolina. I mean, I'm kind of overlooking that one, but there's many games, LSU, Pitt, the defense, Kentucky was another one. Defense won Tennessee those football games last season. If they can take that step forward, they host Georgia. I think that's the only shot because Georgia's got such a ridiculously easy schedule. We need to rip that thing up. We need to throw them Alabama or something.
I think when I look at the SEC, and I know Tennessee did a great job last year, or I should say a good job, and they'll be pretty good again this year. But I think the only team that can take them out is Alabama potentially in the SEC championship game. And the reason why I think that is because Alabama is still a program that expects to win, and they're not afraid to play Georgia. I saw guys at the University of Tennessee make plays all year that they didn't make or try to make when they played against the University of Georgia in some of those games. And there's a mental hurdle you have to overcome when you're trying to take down the giant. And I know that Alabama has the mental toughness to compete with and play with Georgia, and I'm not sure that anybody else has shown yet that they can do that.
I got to agree with you, Carl. I know it kind of seems like the easy answer, right? Because it's Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide, and they just continue to rebuild and reload and, really no drop-off from year to year. Their defense, I know it gets a lot of the talk from last year and that it wasn't that great, right? And this was a step back. I think that Tennessee game and the 52 points is what a lot of people are focusing in on. But this defense was actually really good. I mean, they averaged 18 points a game, so that's not bad. They've got the #1 recruiting class coming in next year. You got Keon Keeley coming in to replace Will Anderson Jr. I also like the fact, now this is kind of the mental side of things, Alabama's probably not happy about how last season went. Nick Saban is not happy about how last season went. And the last time they failed to reach the college football playoff was back in 2019. And what did they do the next year? Well, they won the whole dang thing and did not lose a game in the regular season. So I'm picking Alabama for this too. Brad, who's your pick?
Never underestimate the revenge factor. And if you look at the starting 22 for both teams, I think LSU really measures up well with Georgia this season. But this Tigers offensive line is youth infused, had 2 true freshman starters in key spots last season. That front has to hold up in a very competitive conference in order to win the SEC and possibly get to the playoffs. So I almost leaned Alabama here with Carl and Emily, but I think LSU has fewer questions than the Crimson Tide at this time when you look at both coaching staffs and the personnel on the field, especially at quarterback. LSU's quarterback room right now is light years better than Alabama. And I haven't even mentioned Harold Perkins, who is probably the nation's top returning defender. He's a guy who's, top 5 pick in the future, is going to be a Micah Parsons type clone in the NFL.
Man, I hear revenge for Alabama. I hear reload for Alabama, rebuild for Alabama. How many years are we going to do this? I thought last year was the revenge. I thought the year before was the reload. Georgia just reloaded. They reloaded into a national championship. So I don't know. I'm over hyping up Alabama. They should have lost 4 games last year. I think they're closer to the middle of the pack than they are elite. But again, maybe that's just the Tennessee in me saying that.
When Shaquille O'Neal was playing for the Los Angeles Lakers and they were on their run, he used to say, guys, we the champs until we ain't the champs no more. And that's the position that Georgia is in right now. They the champs until they ain't the champs no more. We'll see this fall if somebody can beat them.
All right, we mentioned one SEC East team. Are we all in agreement that we think Tennessee has the best shot to dethrone Georgia when it comes to that side of the SEC? Brad, you're kind of moving your head. There might be a school that you want to throw out, or you agree Tennessee's got the best shot?
I mean, Tennessee did give up 63 points as a 24-point favorite last November.
Yeah.
So until Tennessee, can piece together some of these consecutive big wins. I know they beat Alabama last season. You can't be an elite team and lay eggs. And South Carolina, let's face it, that was an egg for Tennessee. Gamecocks did win the following week against Clemson, but it's going to be different this season. That game's in Neyland Stadium. Gamecocks have not won there in a while for whatever reason. South Carolina can't seem to execute in front of that Big Orange Crush, but Gamecocks are a team that I think right now I would place number 3 in the SEC East behind Georgia and Tennessee. But if Spencer Rattler and Juice Wells hook up, 14 times for touchdowns next season, Gamecocks might be a team that can finish with 9 or 10 wins.
Yeah, and the only other team that I would maybe throw into the consideration is Kentucky. South Carolina, I think you got to put them there as well. But I just think South Carolina and Kentucky got a long way to go. I think it would have to be a dream season for that to even be a realistic possibility for Kentucky. I think, like we've said, they'll be a solid team. But, if they get aces on Devin Leary, Liam Cohen Magic comes back, their defense, one of the better defenses in the SEC last season, just underrated because of the offense was so poor. If they can get that offense high flying, maybe we have a little bit of a dream run here in Lexington.
If we're talking about the teams on the east side of the division, I think that South Carolina probably would have the best chance. Quarterback is back. Great recruiting class for the University of South Carolina. Shane Beamer closed the season very strong. Got Tennessee right up out of there. Went and rolled Clemson. It's going to be a very, very tough out for teams to beat South Carolina. And Georgia did have a couple of close calls this last season with the University of Missouri and with Kent State. So I think that when you look at the situation, South Carolina could be a team that potentially could give Georgia a run for the money if anybody in the SEC can do it. But I still think the coaching that Georgia has, along with the talent, is going to be awfully, awfully tough for anybody on this schedule that I'm looking at to beat the University of Georgia in the regular season.
Oh, yeah. This is just us making the case. If a team were to do it, that this is who our picks are for that to happen. Mike, I want to ask you this question. What's your concern rating on Georgia losing both the quarterback and the offensive coordinator in the same offseason?
Well, out of 1 out of 10, it's probably a 5 because Todd Monken, I thought, did an outstanding job. And I'm one of the many people that disrespected Stetson Bennett for 2 years. So after he's rebounded, Heisman finalist, back-to-back national championships, I got to give him his due. I don't see how they're going to replace that production. But at the same time, while Mike Bobo, a lot of people mocking that hire, I've always thought Mike Bobo was an excellent offensive play caller. At South Carolina, his quarterback that last year, I think it was a guy named Colin Hill. He was awful. He was the worst quarterback in the SEC. He had one good receiver, Shi Smith. Kevin Harris was the best season he ever had was under Mike Bobo. He goes to Auburn. People forget. I mean, it's easy to overlook the Brian Harsin era. It was such a disaster. But that 1 year Mike Bobo was down there, they controlled the SEC West heading into November. Bo Nix breaks his ankle, and they fell apart. They still could have beaten Alabama if Tank Bigsby didn't go out of bounds. These are things that Mike Bobo should get credit for. So, again, I think the players matter more than the coaches. Georgia's going to have elite talent. So I think they're going to be just fine on offense.